Well, I guess it's my turn to throw another opinion into this massive conflagration that can barely be construed as a seasonal discussion at this point. If you've somehow been out of the loop lately, the most talked about anime of the new fall season has easily been Goblin Slayer, and the divisive reaction to the more intense elements of this first episode have spawned heated discussion on both sides of the argument. One screams about how the show is morally bankrupt and repugnant, while the other bathes in the salt of the former and embraces this uber-gritty story. But like pretty much every overreaction, the truth isn't that simple. And that's what I want to get to the bottom of in this video by comparing it to one of the most famous dark fantasy anime of all time, as well as one of my personal favorites, to see just how woefully far apart these two shows actually are, despite how often they're compared to each other. Also, if you haven't heard about it already from past discussions, there is going to be a lot of talk about rape in this video. So if that's something you find personally upsetting to discuss, this probably is not the video for you. So, let's talk about rape in fiction. Rape as a plot device is actually fairly common in fiction in general, probably more so in other mediums outside of anime. As a standalone concept, rape is a neutral storytelling element, potentially a very powerful element, but a neutral one nonetheless. It does not make a story inherently better or worse. It is just a tool that a writer uses to further the point that they're making. Goblin Slayer uses rape in an excessively crude and gratuitous fashion, causing many people to react in an intensely negative way. But that's not really the whole story. And to understand where Goblin Slayer fails in its implementation of rape, we first have to take a look at a series that implements it almost perfectly. Also, I'm about to spoil the shit out of Berserk, including some post-Golden Age stuff. The statement, Berserk probably has the most famous rape scene in all of anime, is a strange one to put into words, but it's still very true. Few anime have been able to match the traumatic portrayal of Casca's rape at the hands of Griffith. However, the fact that Griffith is raping Casca is not what's most important here. Much like any storytelling element, what's important is why. At the end of the Golden Age arc, Griffith sacrifices his humanity as well as the lives of the Band of the Hawk in order to ascend to godhood and become part of a group of demons known as the God Hand. And as his first act as a member of the God Hand, Griffith, now known as Femto, rapes Casca in front of Guts. There is an important narrative element for why he does this that comes up much later in the story, but in this moment the symbolic message is much more relevant. In general, the most common ideas that rape is used to represent are power, inhumanity, and betrayal, and all of these exist in this moment. Griffith has ascended to a level of power far beyond that of a normal human, and he then chooses to display that power in a hurtful and demoralizing way because he has literally given up his humanity and become a monster. More importantly though, he is essentially using this as retribution against Guts, his former friend and Casca's lover. After Guts defeated Griffith and left the Band of the Hawk, Griffith lost control of himself and committed acts that eventually led him to being imprisoned and tortured for nearly a year. When Guts returns to the Band of the Hawk and rescues Griffith, they discover that his body is far too broken to ever recover, and Casca, who was once infatuated with Griffith, finds comfort in her new relationship with Guts. Upon noticing this, Griffith's mind passes the breaking point, causing him to stumble into the realm of the God Hand and begin his ascent to godhood. And so, when he finally reaches his goal after years of pain and suffering, Griffith takes revenge on Guts by raping the one whom he now holds most dear, and displays the immense power gap between them, an idea that had been thrown into question when Guts left. Much like any other good piece of fiction, a major action taken by a character does not exist in a bubble. It has meaning and symbolism that echoes throughout the story, and the rape of Casca is a perfect example of this. Even in later chapters of Berserk where rape is vastly more widespread and much more gratuitous than before, it still carries significant meaning. After Griffith's ascent, the world began a dramatic shift towards the supernatural, with demons becoming more and more prevalent. The world is out of balance. These terrifying creatures are not normal. They are horrific, unholy, and unnatural, and so many of them commit vile acts like rape that fly in the face of human human decency. Yes, it's not as tightly written as the God Hand scene, but it's still meaningful. Even one of the story's very first instances of rape, where Donovan rapes Guts as a child, has some meaning behind it. It's not just that Donovan raped Guts, it's that Gambino, who Guts looked up to as a father figure, allowed Donovan to rape him. An act of complete betrayal. So what then is the rape scene in Goblin Slayer meant to symbolize? Well, the obvious answers are power and inhumanity, which makes sense at first since the goblins are overwhelming the adventurers and displaying their cruel nature. However, goblins are not a symbol of power in Goblin Slayer. We are literally told that goblins are not very powerful but rely on their cunning to capture their prey. These are not upper echelon monsters in the world of Goblin Slayer like how Femto is a higher level being in Berserk. Furthermore, the idea that goblins are powerful in any capacity is completely shattered once the titular Goblin Slayer shows up and massacres them almost instantly. It's not that the goblins are strong, it's that the adventurers they fought are weak, stupid, and ill-prepared for this encounter. Does this mean that the story is going to be about this blonde girl becoming not a useless waste of skin? Maybe, but my money's on no since it's not her name in the title of the series. This character's probably just going to be another Lucy clone, a tag-along character that occasionally gets focus but ultimately doesn't mean much to the story. So then, what about their inhumanity? Supposedly, goblins are all male and require the females of other species to breed, hence the necessity for rape and other violent acts against other races. Goblins in this world are an inherently evil race, entirely devoid of traits that would make them feel human. Sounds good. I might have been able to buy that. Except for this stupid scene where the Goblin Slayer starts murdering baby goblins and they try to pass it off as something morally questionable. This shot is meant to portray them in a sympathetic light, as though they could have grown up to not be murderous rapists, which is fucking dumb. If I find a baby cockroach in my kitchen, I'm not gonna let it live because it might turn out to be an okay cockroach that doesn't spread disease all over my food. I'm gonna smash the shit out of it and every other cockroach I see, especially if their parents just raped and murdered all of my friends. But enough about my Men in Black fanfiction. In the end, I don't think Goblin Slayer is worth nearly as much fuss as is currently being made about it. Aside from the rape, it's really not that graphic with its violence, and without any meaning behind it, the rape is just a shallow attempt at feigning dark storytelling. I'm not morally outraged at it for using rape in this manner. Nothing will ever upset me as much as Lost Children did, and you can put that on my fucking tombstone. And also hold it against me until I finally make my standalone Berserk video. What upsets me is that it's just a lazy attempt at inciting disturbing emotions in its audience because it doesn't understand how to use the tools in its arsenal. Even fucking SAO, a series that many people, including me, despise for its insistence on making so many of its antagonists potential rapists, actually manages to understand this concept better. Nobuyuki is a high-ranking businessman who holds Asuna's life in his hands. He is in a position of power over Kirito and Asuna, so even in this instance, the attempted rape scene has at least some meaning behind it. Like the hapless adventurers in its story, Goblin Slayer is ill-equipped to meet the standards of an audience with even a remote interest in a show that has more to offer than big, strong guy kill monsters. If that kind of stuff is your speed, then by all means go watch Goblin Slayer. But stop trying to insist that the series is in any way like Berserk simply because it has excessive violence and rape. If that's your impression of Berserk, then I implore you to watch that series again and see just how wrong you are. Thanks for watching, everybody. I know it's been like over a month since my last new video. I've been so busy trying to get the channel back in order after re-uploading everything. But all of that is finally done now, so I can focus totally on new content. I think I have at least 1 or 2 more videos planned for October, so be sure to look forward to those, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all my latest content. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourke Tenjoin, Christine Seibert, Tim Johnson, Call Me Catlord, Diane Versbicki, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.